our children grow up hurt, angry, confused as a result of damage. To make matters worse, you will find that there is no psychological or spiritual counseling for some of the children who have been exposed to such traumatic conditions. The challenge still remains for the board and the enforcement committee. That is, how do you ensure that a child or children who have to stay with parents or relatives who expose them to pornography and molest them thereafter are caught, reported, and charged? And all of the bill provides for the board, the council, the enforcement committee, and the appeal tribunal. And in some instances, there is a bit of overlap of roles and functions. All of them are obligated to be impartial and independent. And will they really be able to deal with all films, games, videos, or pictures circulated on website, video machines, etc.? Will they have enough manpower to deal with that? Will it click somewhere that a certain gadget played on a video which is with harmful information or hate speech or vulgar? Will it really happen? The very fact that there's a permit to be issued by the board in accordance with Section 23 to all online distributors, wherein the online distributors are exempted from submitting films and games to the board for classification subject to such terms and conditions, that the board may deem it fit. This again opens a loose valve for the circulation of wrong information. To us as the NFP, this bill really has a lot of gaps and in its form at the moment cannot be accepted.
The Honorable Macheke.
Honorable Speaker, honorable members, the United Democratic Movement believes that the bill is not ripe for adoption and should therefore be returned to the committee for further work on the following grounds. The proposed amendment on the definition of prohibited material that may not be distributed in South Africa, the Act at present outlaws material that A, violates, disrespects human dignity, is degrading of human beings, and incites, promotes, causing harm to human beings. The proposal in the bill is to replace these three with a single definition prohibiting only violent pornography. The unintended consequence is that non-violent sexual material that violates human dignity, all degrading material that does not contain an element of explicit violence, and material that incites or promotes harm being done to human beings will become legally distributable in South Africa. This proposal cannot be supported, as it constitutes a clear violation of human dignity and will create public safety risk in relation to people inciting others in society to harm themselves or others. In terms of the proposed legislation of the online distribution of adult pornography to all adults, to an extent that this measure protects children from exposure to pornography, it is welcomed. However, what about the risk of the harm to children and vulnerable women, including people in the sex trade, when adults are exposed to mainstream hardcore adult pornography? Scientific research evidence shows that pornography use, also mainstream hardcore pornography, leads some men to commit sexual violence, including rape against children and vulnerable women. In a country with some of the highest levels of sexual violent crime in the world, is it not a good idea to sanction the mass distribution of mainstream hardcore pornography to all adults in South Africa? Without an investigation into this extremely concerning matter, we cannot conclude that we are doing enough to protect women and children from sexual violence and rape. Legalizing pornography creates an incentive for further acts of sexual violence and rape. UDM cannot support this proposal until such time that as a credible investigation or inquiry has been done into the effects on the whole of South African society, especially women and children, when adults are exposed to mainstream hardcore pornography. I thank you.
The Honorable Alberts.
Thank you, Speaker. This bill's intention to align the classification of films and publications with new technology platforms and provide for new protections is sensible. Maar die vraag is egter of ons die regering kan vertrou in hierdie poging tot regulering. Die vraag kan net beantwoord word deur te kyk na die geskiedenis en fynskrif van die wetsontwerp. Maar daar is talle probleme waarvan twee uitstaan. The first is the bill's initial provisions that require pre-approval of internet content before it could be placed online. Not only is this mechanism a patently unconstitutional form of censorship, its wide ambit would bring into the fold a requirement of pre-approval basically of any online content. This clearly unconstitutional submission is emblematic of so many other patently unconstitutional bills submitted by the ANC in the past. These types of provisions are only suppressed once opposition and public starts pushing back. The ANC is constantly testing the resolve of both the public and the Constitution. Could it perhaps be that they do not in reality believe in a constitution? The second problem is the fact that the censors in this case are completely oblivious to the fact that internet content is by its very nature something that cannot be truly regulated. Yes, you can make rules for content uploaded and distributed from South African servers, but when you do that, when you can do with content originating from beyond the borders, you can't really regulate that. Nothing except to report it to foreign authorities. Dit is dus duidelik dat die wetsontwerp nie 'n bona fide poging is om vrouens en kinders te beskerm nie. Daar word eerder gepoog om onder die dekmantel van beskerming sensuur terug te bring en nog erger om beheer uit te oefen oor die inhoud op die internet. Daar is geen twyfel dat bose inhoud weggehou moet word van kinders en die vervaardiging en verspreiding van daardie inhoud gestop moet word nie. Daar is egter meer sinvolle wyse om dit te doen. Soos om byvoorbeeld die kinderbeskermingseenheid van die Suid-Afrikaanse Polisiediens weer die beste in die wêreld te maak, ten einde die vervaardiging, verspreiding en besit van kinderpornografie en ander onwettige inhoud binne die land te verhoed. It is thus unfortunate that we have to be skeptical about the true intentions of government regarding this bill. We do not think you had the interests of women and children in mind when you actually created these mechanisms of censure and control that is patently unconstitutional. Thank you.
The Honourable Sally.
Honourable Chair, Honourable Speaker, Deputy President, Ministers and Deputy Ministers, Honourable Members, the ANC supports the Films and Publications Amendment Bill. Though tremendous progress has been registered on the implementation of the Principal Act, which was passed in 1996, several constraints emerged which necessitated the need to introduce some amendments. The ethos underpinning the Principal Act was to shift away from the notion of a censorship board to a classification authority providing South Africans with the information to make a choice about what they want to watch or play. We are satisfied as the ANC with the extensive public consultation that has been conducted and would like to appreciate the interest shown by stakeholders in the media sector who made various submissions to the Portfolio Committee. This is indeed in the spirit of the Freedom Charter that the people shall govern. The film and publication sector should be at the forefront and a reflection of a high moral standing so as to protect broader society and the most vulnerable in our society, our children. The classification of movies, films, and games will enable parents to choose suitable media streaming and safeguard their children from explicit and harmful content in media technologies, while at the same time uphold the freedom of expression as envisioned in the Constitution. So the passing of this amendment bill, Speaker, will have more impact in preventing children from being prematurely exposed to pornography. Honourable Speaker, media remains a motive force in the dissemination of information, broader education, and contribution to a knowledgeable nation. This role is vulnerable to content that connotes sexually explicit violence and a threat to others. As a consequence, government has to be proactive in creating an environment where these tendencies are kept. We are confident, Honourable Speaker, with the passing of this bill, people will think twice before they advocate racism on media due to the severe penalties that are now being proposed. But our observation is that almost all the perpetrators of racism have links in one way or another with the honourable members on my left. Just to remind you about the two much talked about incidents. You'll remember Penny Sparrow, who was fined 150,000 by the Equality Court for comparing black people at the beach to monkeys. Your own member of parliament, caller Bernard, who caused a storm on social
Point of
media
order.
for claiming better services.
Order, Honorable Sedi, can you take your seat? Take the point of order. What's the point of order, Honorable
The honourable
Sedi?
member knows full well that if he wants to make allegations against a member of this House, he must do so by way of a substantive motion.
Honorable member, indeed, you are aware of that rule. So please submit whatever you want to say against the honorable member in the right way. Please proceed.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. How you responded to these incidents was really not convincing that you don't subscribe to their actions. In fact, it characterized who you are and what you represent. So this bill is intended to deal decisively with incidents of this nature. One of the limitations of the Principal Act was the right to appeal decisions of the board on classifications, and we are confident this bill closes that gap as it now provides a platform for those not satisfied with the board decision to appeal to the appeal board. Equally, Honorable Speaker, there were no direct accountability mechanisms between the consumer and the distributor. The bill will also reduce cyberbullying, grooming, and hate speech and enhance social cohesion. Muzulaji Duro, uteo bana chumisano bukati abafara mkobe na zwiimiswa zwoṱhe zwilwaho na vhugevhenga u itela uri vhathu vhoṱhe vha kone u tevhedzela mulayo tibe na u itela uri vhono pfuka mulayo vha dzhiele vhukando ho teaho. Sa ANC ri tikedza u engedzwa ha zwigwevho na dzifaini kha vhathu vhoṱhe u itela uri mulayo u kone uri u tevhedziwe. Minister, we call on the department and the board to go on an intensive awareness campaign on this amendment bill. Once it is passed, which empowers you to execute your mandate as enshrined in the Constitution of enforcing compliance. Do it without fear, favor, and prejudice. Therefore, the ANC is unequivocal in supporting this amendment bill. Thank you very much.
The Honorable Madisha.
Honorable Speaker, it was the Film and Publication Board that reclassified the film in Ngayaba, the wound to the ex-18s on the pretext of protecting children from being exposed, in quote, to pornography. This reclassification was done following complaints from, amongst others, a Contralesa. Speaker, it is hard not to conclude that the Film and Publication Board was pressured to upgrade the classification by Contralesa rather than considering its content. I point this out because the FPB bill seeks in part to amend the Act to make it applicable to online content, to give government through the board the power to censor the internet, etc. COPE accepts that the all-pervasive and constantly growing nature of electronic media has eclipsed traditional and more easily regulated forms of communication. COPE accepts that there may well be a need to exercise some form of regulation over this new field of communication, but COPE cannot support this bill in its current form. In this regard, COPE expresses its concerns at, inter alia, the constitutionality of the bill, particularly in respect of freedom of expression. 2, the apartheid-style censorship approach of the bill. 3, the need for prior classification and the burden that this would place on the industry. 4, the cost and economic implications that the bill will place on the industry. 5, the capacity of the FPB to deliver on the mandate of the bill. We therefore do not support this at all. Thank you.
The Honorable Dozie.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. With this bill, the ANC has set out to protect Mr. Mephatswe from the abuse he suffered when his nudes were shared on social media. It is indeed a noble pursuit to invent laws that protect people from such abuse where their nudes are published without their consent. Indeed, there are many young women who are forced by criminals into relationships they no longer want to stay in, using the threat to publicize their nudes and sex tapes on social media. The bill also seeks to regulate hate speech. Most importantly is the prohibition that relates to child pornography shared online on online films and content in general. In this regard, the bill appears to have good intentions. Who would disagree with prohibitions of this nature to protect children and human dignity in general? However, in this noble pursuit, the bill has crossed the line between protection and censorship in ways reminiscent of apartheid. In fact, the bill seems to revive the scrapped sections of its former apartheid self. It is surprising because child pornography is already regulated under the Sexual Offences Act. This renders such an amendment of this proposed bill futile. Secondly, in the matter of Prime Media South Africa versus Home Affairs, the Constitutional Court already ruled that pre-classification is unconstitutional. Yet, at the center of the bill is a mechanism of pre-classification of any online publications. Even user-generated content is included in this madness, meaning Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, Twitter videos must be pre-classified before being uploaded, even by us private individuals. So let us imagine that indeed the government could generate capacity to pre-classify all videos through some super software and hundreds of thousands of employees. How would you regulate live streaming? This is where not only the stupidity of the bill lies, but also its utter backwardness. To pre-regulate online publications means to include an upload video on Twitter, on a Facebook, on Instagram posts and blogs. To help those trapped by criminals who use their sex tapes and nudes to subject them to oppression, we need to create safe police stations and some different mechanisms using social work to save them, not pre-classification. Even to regulate child pornography online, we would not be able to achieve this through a strict pre-classification as seen in the Act without threatening the rights to free speech. The Constitutional Court ruling is therefore instructive here. People must publish, then face the consequences of their actions, meaning where violations of the regulations occur, there must be harsh steps taken to ensure that others do not repeat these mistakes. This, in relation to child pornography, is already dealt with. Insisting that people, before they upload pictures, videos, or before they update their social media statuses on the internet, must first get certificates or permission from the board is impractical and reactionary. Pre-classification is open to abuse and threatens freedom of expression and speech. Here, government will have the power to delay and even halt free speech. Imagine if an online article uploading Zuma's corruption in Nkandla were to have to seek permission first. Or if citizens had to seek permission before they upload videos of criminals stealing cars, or racists assaulting our people or placing them in coffins. Or worse, imagine if we were to seek permission from the board before you tweet an accident or a health emergency, or even that a certain minister has asked you for sex or a nude in exchange for a job. Under this bill, Twitter, social medias, Facebook, Instagram, even Touch HD or online radio, which is being broadcasted or live streamed, will be literally impossible. So already newspapers have the power to self-regulation. So, Speaker, we reject this bill. It's reactionary, and if needs be, we're going to mobilize the whole of society to oppose it, including going to the Constitutional Court to stop it. It's unconstitutional.
Honorable Dudley.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. According to the memorandum on the objectives of this bill, one of the objectives is to decriminalize the online distribution of adult content on all platforms, including digital platforms. In other words, to legalize online distribution of adult pornography in South Africa. On 3 occasions last year, the ACDP addressed the House on the harms of adult pornography for society, especially for vulnerable groups like women and children, and brought the issue to the attention of the committee. The impact on society, including children when adults are exposed to adult mainstream hardcore pornography is no secret. It has been well researched and documented. The bottom line is pornography use is rife in South Africa. We are in the top 20 of all countries in the world, but we are number 1 in the world for accessing pornography via smartphones. Gender-based sexual violence is rife in South Africa. Mostly adult males abusing and violating women and children. Research or scientific evidence shows without a doubt that pornography use is a cause of gender-based sexual violence. Having been alerted to the evidence, what does the social economic impact assessment on the bill say about this? Nothing. Having been alerted to the evidence, what has the Portfolio Committee on Communications done about this? Nothing. Hopefully as yet. After viewing over 500 studies to determine whether consumption of pornography caused gender-based violence, Dr. Max Waltham of Stockholm University concluded that the weight of the evidence is clear that pornography causes gender-based violence. Research also found that men who believed more strongly in impersonal, promiscuous sex and were hostile toward women were significantly more likely to commit sexual violence and sexually assault a woman if they frequently used pornography. It is unthinkable that we as a parliament are not prepared to debate or consider scientific facts available for the purpose of informing policy decisions like this one, that will place women and children at greater risk of becoming victims of sexual violence. The ACDP appeals to this House to correct this omission, do the responsible thing, and send this legislation back to the committee to first do an in-depth investigation into the public health costs and the social consequences of adults' use of and exposure to pornography before legalizing the mass online distribution of pornography in South Africa. In the United States, 9 state legislatures have acknowledged pornography as a public health crisis, having multiple harmful public health and safety consequences. The ACDP also raised the danger of watering down the proposed amendment to the definition of prohibited material, which at present outlaws material that violates or disrespects human dignity, is degrading of human beings, and incites or promotes the causing of harm to human beings. This is in line with our Constitution. The ACDP cannot support this bill as it is not in the interest of justice or in the public interest and cannot be justified on constitutional grounds. I thank you.
The Honorable Gallo.
Honorable Speaker, the Films and Publication Amendment Bill underpins the moral character which we sought to define the South African narrative after 1994. A nation that fails to regulate the filming and the publication of any material to be screened in the public domain is set for moral decay. The bill ushers in a new dawn. In terms of the bill, there is a new amendment on the current definition of child pornography. The bill punishes anyone who is A, engaged in sexual conduct with children, B, participating in or assisting another person to participate in sexual conduct, C, showing or describing the body or parts of the body of such a person in a manner or in circumstances which within context amounts to sexual exploitation. The bill introduces stringent requirements for any who wishes to distribute, broadcasts, or exhibits any film or game in South Africa is required to register with the Film and Publication Board and submit for examination and classification any film or game that has not already been classified, exempted, or approved under the Act. Speaker, the bill has taken the public into confidence. Any member of the public who is unhappy with or offended by a classification may now apply to the board for reclassification. It is assuring that the consumers of this material are now enjoined to make a decision about the classification of films in the country. Speaker, there is a lot of cyber explicit material on the internet that is not regulated. The bill provides for the regulation of this content. For instance, it states that no person may create, produce, or distribute any electronic medium, including the internet and social networking sites, any films or photographs depicting sexual assault and violence against children. Speaker, the rights of the children are of paramount importance. South Africa is a beacon of hope and has since defined itself as the guardian of minor children. We welcome this bill and its intended objectives. South Africa is not the country which must promote satanism. Thank you.
We call upon Honorable Machoba to deliver her maiden speech.
Speaker, Your Excellency, Deputy President, members of Parliament, and guests, molweni. Intetho yam iza kuhlonipha abantwana ukususela ukuzalwa kwabo kuyoma kwi-18 years abaye bavinjwa amathuba okuthi baye esikolweni. Oko kusenzeka phaya kwilali yaseNgcobo. Enyanga kusenziwa icawe ebizwa ngokuba yakwaMancobo abazibiza ngokubana yi-7 angels. Oko kwenzeke phaya kulacawe into enjeya mayingaze iphinde yenzeke. Sijongile siyacela kwinkonzo zethu ekuhlaleni mazincedise kwimpucuko yabantu. South African Council of Churches yayiswila nathi ngexesha lobandlululo. Siyacela baphakame nangoku icawe mazingaxhaphazi abantu bethu. Ikhona i-South African Council Churches. Nakubo abantwana bazelwe bazi-abhino, siyakukhalimela ukubulawa kwabo. Eso sisenzo esibi nesimdaka akungazange umuntu kwenziwe amayeza ngabo. Abantu ebenza oko mabatshutshiswe babhalwe kumqulu wezaphulomthetho. Kwaye simemezela isosayethu yathu ijonge isenzo esinjalo kuba silihlazo. I-message to our community: you must know your neighbor. Kungathi kanti apha kwebumelwaneni kukho izinto ezenzekayo.
There's a point of order. Take your seat, Honorable Machoba. Yes, Honorable
Madam
Steenhuisen.
Speaker, with respect, we're discussing the Films and Publication Amendments Bill. I don't know what churches and albinism have to do with the bill.
No, Honorable Steenhuisen, please don't judge. Especially this is a maiden speech. Just allow Honorable Machoba to make her points. Please proceed.
Thank you, Speaker. Abantu bakuthi mabafundiswe amalungelo abo ukuze bangaphindi baxhatshazwe ngabantu abakhohlakeleyo. Kanje kuyafuneka siqale icawe ziqalise ubhaliso inkonzo zibe phansi kwe-South African Council Churches. Sensations imposed on Film and Publication Amendment Bill. The Film Publication Act number 65 of 1996, as amended Act, state that consequences of non-compliance is a period of imprisonment as prescribed or fine. However, the Act does not prescribe the amount payable, and it is therefore left to the judge to make a determination taking into consideration the fact of the case and other legal principles and case law. Therefore, the bill seeks to remedy this shortcoming by providing certainly on the maximum amount that can be imposed in respect of each transgression. Furthermore, the current sanction related to prohibited use of children and the exposure of children to pornography were considered inadequate given the gravity and impact of the offense. The FPB sought to remedy this by increasing the period of imprisonment, which would also bring the act in line with the offense prescribed in sexual offenses and Related Matters Amendment Act number 32 of 2007 is amended. We have noted the high number of court cases from media and FPB. The government of South Africa absolutely needs regulator. This increase in these offenses in South Africa leave us with no option but to tighten and put emphasis on how the South African government is serious, and therefore the law should be strongly applied with clarity and determination, protect the African child. ANC support the bill. The FPB Amendment Bill. I thank you.
The Honorable Mbinda.
Thanks, Madam Speaker. At least today I have more time than Honorable Osaizan. As the PAC, we have always been concerned with the content of the programs in our television screens, print media, and recently social media. Hence, on behalf of the PAC, we want to take this opportunity and acknowledge the great job done in the Portfolio Committee on Communication. The benchmarking and consultative process we have been engaged in has revealed how vulnerable is our film and publication regulations, with some exploiting this for their own gross intentions. There should be a clear demarcation between content used for educational purposes and content that is purely unacceptable to be viewed and assessed by society, especially children. A case in hand is the Inxeba saga. As a nation, we must have self-love, and this means we must respect each other's different cultural practices, if indeed we are to live together in peace. Madam Speaker and fellow South Africans, as the PAC will remain opposed to the low levels of regulatory measures towards social media. On a daily basis, we see unacceptable content ranging from pornographic content accessed by even kids in primary school. Perpetrators of kids or children abuse thrive on these weaknesses, and this has to come to a stop. With this, we are not calling for some sort of limitation to press freedom. However, we remain concerned when video clips of brutally killed people that should be in the hands of the police doing rounds on social networking before even the families of the victims being informed, as an example. In conclusion, media is a very powerful tool in society, and it has the power to influence what is right and wrong, what is normal and abnormal, and what is normal and abnormal. If not correctly regulated, we will remain wondering where most of these emerging social ills are emerging from our youth, continue learning them from the media. We support the bill and encourage the House to take this as a work in progress.
The Honorable, the Chief Whip of the Opposition.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. At the outset, let me congratulate the producers and cast of Inxeba, who had been successful in the courts of having the X rating removed so that South Africans can watch that movie again. Madam Speaker, the problem with this bill is that it's clearly been conceived by Luddites who have absolutely no conception about the internet, about social media, and about the freedom of expression and the freedom to privacy in South Africa. It is a worst example of the nanny state in action, trying to adopt a paternalistic approach to citizens' lives. The prime example of this is the issue of the pre-classification. This in itself is a form of censorship. Pre-classification has already been dealt with in our courts, and the courts found in this case with print and other publications, and I quote, that the free flow of constitutionally protected expression is the rule. Prior classification should be the exception, unquote. Section 14 of the Constitution ensures that citizens are entitled to privacy. The directories and information that is expected to be retained by ISPs invades the privacy of ordinary citizens. And that information in the wrong hands is terrifying. Section 16 allows us to have freedom of expression in South Africa. There is a complete duplication of this bill. Many of the ill effects that the members on my right have spoken about today are offences under the Criminal Procedures Act, in terms of the cyber securities proposed bill that comes through later, as well as PAPUDA. There will be a massive duplication. But what we should be most terrified about is the input from the Honourable Cele, who said that it's government's duty to provide our morals and values. It's not government's duty to provide morals and values. And we ask you, Honourable Cele, whose morals and whose values? If it's the ones from this side of the House, I think South Africans should stand up and say, no, thank you.
The Honourable Kalako.
Madam Speaker, Deputy President, Ministers and Honourable Members, firstly, I think we must remind each other that this amendment was necessitated by a court judgment ruling some of the aspects of it as unconstitutional. So this bill is trying to address that, and also is trying to be in line with the developments in the technological innovations. Deputy Speaker, there have been areas of concern raised, which are being raised even here today by stakeholders during the public hearings. Among them was that penalty committee lacks sufficient degree of independence. And this was due to the fact that it is appointed by the minister. In order to address that, the committee gave this responsibility to the council, and the committee is now referred to as enforcement committee to enforce the act. There are other concerns around use of the term child sexual abuse material, which was preferred over the term child pornography because it is used globally. As the committee and all other departments that were consulted in this regard agreed to retain child pornography as it is in line with the principal legislation which deals with sexual offenses, namely criminal law. Insertion of the phrase, that is where most of my colleagues on the left have actually been screaming and kicking in order to protect their businesses. Insertion of the phrase commercial online distributor in the definition of distributor was also raised as a concern. This is answered by inclusion of a definition of distributor in the bill, which means a person who conducts the business of distributing films, games, or publications, and includes a commercial online distributor, and commercial online distributor means a distributor in relations to films. On the other, you'll open your business, will protect your business. On the other hand, on commercial online distributor means any person who distributes content using the internet or enables content to be distributed by a user of online services for personal or private purposes. As FPB seeks to regulate online distributors, a distinction has been made between commercial and non-commercial distributors. I don't know the propaganda you are coming with here as if that have not been made. It's in this bill. We're discussing that with you. As some of the committee members and stakeholders expressed concerns on addition of the definition of hate speech after the definition of game, Comrade Rose, the feeling was that hate speech. The feeling was that Section 10 of the Promotion of Equality and Prevention of Unfair Discrimination Act, which dealt with the prohibition of hate speech, was more appropriate. In addressing this concern, definition of hate speech, which was introduced in the first version of the bill, has been revised to ensure that it is compatible with the Constitution Act 108 of 1996. This is so in order to create legal certainty. It has been confined to the grounds outlined in the Constitution. Honorable members, it is our submission as the ANC that this bill will protect children from the use and creation of illegal content, that is child pornography, for distribution in the South African market. Exposure to illegal content distributed in South African environment, especially online. Exposure to harmful content online, e.g. pornography, sex, violence, premature exposure could have adverse psychological and behavioral impact on children. The bill will also protect adult consumers or parents through clear labeling and consumer advisories of content online, enabling them to make responsible viewing choices for themselves and children in their care. Awareness on available mechanisms required in safeguarding children online, responsiveness and accountability of the FPB and service providers when consumers' complaints are lodged. Furthermore, the bill will protect online distributors of films and games against piracy. You are protected also as distributors, don't complain. Get into the bill and read it thoroughly as we were deliberating on it. You will see none of the things you are raising here of pre-classification, of censorship, of freedom of speech, none of those things are there in that bill. Read the bill, don't be glued up into your stereotype of opposing something which doesn't need to be opposed. The bill ensures that law enforcement agencies will be empowered to prosecute effectively, since perpetrators of prohibited content will be easily identified. Law enforcement agencies can now, using penalties and fines provided in the bill, combat piracy, still protecting your businesses. The victims of online revenge pornography will now have recourse mechanism, and members of the public will be empowered through digital literacy campaigns. Public will make informed decisions through accessing content that has been classified and labeled appropriately. Madam Speaker, just as closing, it is important to correct everybody is crazy about Ingleba. Sometimes I like my chair when he corrects this, that it's not Ingleba, isiko lamaXhosa. Uloluko is not Ingleba, isiko lamaXhosa. So if you want to have cohesion in this society, we must begin to be sensitive to each other's traditions and customs.
I regret your time has expired, Honorable Kalako. The Honorable Minister of Communications.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, Deputy President. Not only does this bill respond to the 2 Constitutional Court judgments, and I want to invite Honorable Ndlozi
to again understand the court judgments on the two, that includes the Prime Media South Africa versus Minister of Home Affairs, and as well as the DIROC versus Director of Public Prosecution. In fact, those two judgments declared the 1996 Act to be invalid. Secondly, what this bill seeks to do is to ensure that there's uniformity in terms of content regulation amongst online distributors, because as we speak now, there is no single regulatory institution that is responsible for developing standards and compliance in line with local and international standards. Thirdly, currently, the internet access providers are not obliged to cap prohibited content when using their services. More and more people are using internet access provider services to propagate prohibited content such as hate speech, child pornography, and many other ill-gotten acts. Madam Speaker, what we should seek to do as this Honorable House is to protect the most vulnerable and the most innocent, our children, both as recipients and in many instances as those who find themselves being used in this. Whilst we may be concerned about commercial interests, we need to make sure that we become a nation that seeks to build a society that will respect one another, cultural diversity, as well as tolerance. Because as we speak now, some amongst us are excited about the movie called Ingleba, which is not just a movie, but it is about diversion, including distortion of some of the cultural practices. It can't be allowed, it can't be tolerated, but it is a demonstration that we need to be sensitive as a nation, that we can't see African cultural practices as a form of entertainment, as we have seen with what happened to Sarah Bartman. We shall have to deal with these issues and go and communicate with society as what kind of society we want to build. Thank you, Nyabong.
Honourable members, that concludes the debate. Are there any objections to the bill being read a second time? Okay. There being objections, I now put the question. Those in favor will say aye. Those against say no. I think
to the also have a response. Whereas the water and sanitation unit
for the city, but for the general welfare of the country, and must serve as a model for the rest of the government. The Minister of Finance, together with the Minister of Public Administration, must undertake a review that EFF indeed gives a superior logic. Thank you very much.
In January, a video showing the principal of Reiger Park Secondary School in Boksburg having sex within his office with a pupil went viral.
Press the no button. Those wishing to abstain should press the abstain button. Have all members voted? The voting session is now closed. These are the results. Abstain, 0. The noes, 35. Yes, 189. That says the question is accordingly agreed to, and the Secretary will read the bill a second time. Secretary.
Films and Publications Amendment Bill.
Thank you very much. The bill will be sent to the National Council of Provinces for concurrence. I will now request the Secretary to read the third order of the day.
Consideration of report of Standing Committee on Finance on special report of Public Protector on implementation of remedial action contained in Public Protector Report number 18 of 2011-12 on maladministration during privatization of vendor pension fund, report number 15 of 2016-17.
I will ask the Chair to introduce the report. Honorable Mabe.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair. On behalf of the Chairperson of the Portfolio Committee, the special report of the Public Protector on the implementation of remedial action contained in Public Protector Report number 18 of 2011-2012 on maladministration during the privatization of the vendor pension fund, report number 15 of 2016-2017 special report in the National Assembly was referred to the Standing Committee on Finance for consideration and report on the 23rd January 2017. The special report confirms the findings in the Public Protector Report number 18 of 2011-2012, issued in 2011, and seeks intervention by the National Assembly in expediting the remedial action as contained in the 2011-2012 report. The Public Protector found in the 2011-2012 report that government mishandled the privatization of the Vembe pension fund in a manner that constituted maladministration, and the complainants were prejudiced by the maladministration. Concerns about narrative and implementation of the 2011-2012 report led to the establishment of a task team consisting of officials from the Office of the Public Protector, Department of Public Service and Administration, National Treasury and Government Pension Administration Agency. The task team is addressing the issues referred to above in terms of special report, namely paucity of records, verifying information relating to posts, departments where the complainants were employed, employment dates, remuneration, and close list of complainants to prevent a floodgate of claims. The special report highlights the reasons for the government to address the injustice set out in the 2011-2012 report and recommends a process based on a close list of complainants and official records to establish reliable database of beneficiaries of the remedial action of the Public Protector. The special report further recommends the commitment of funds by National Treasury to facilitate the recalculation of pension benefits, and that Parliament oversees the implementation of the remedial action in terms of Section 182(1)(c), read with Section 43(2) and 55(2) of the Constitution. To facilitate monitoring of implementation of the recommendations in the special report, the Public Protector directed the Director General of Finance to submit an action plan to the remedial action contained in the 2011-2012 report within 6 weeks of the date of the special report to the Public Protector and the Speaker of the National Assembly. The Public Protector directed the Speaker of the National Assembly to report to the Public Protector on the steps taken to constitute an appropriate mechanism to oversee the implementation of the 2011-2012 report within 14 days of the date of receipt of the action plan. On Friday, the 1st of September 2017, The reply from the Minister of Finance to the recommendations to the special report was tabled and referred to the Standing Committee on Finance for recommendations and to Portfolio Committee on Justice and Correctional Services. The letter dated 26 August 2017 sets out a time-bound action plan starting from the 1st June 2017 until November 2017. On the 4th October 2017, the Standing Committee on Finance received a preliminary briefing on the special report and the letter from the Minister. The committee agreed to consider a statement on the matter during its next meeting. On the 10th October 2017, the committee received a briefing from the Budget Office in National Treasury. The Standing Committee on Finance shares the views and concerns of the Public Protector expressed in the special report on the Public Protector on the implementation of the remedial action contained in the Public Protector's report. It is unacceptable that the claimants in this matter had to wait almost 20 years without a resolution.
Honorable Mabi.
We move that the report be adopted.
Thank you very much. I now recognize the Chief Whip of the Majority Party.
Thanks, Honorable House Chairperson. I move that the report be adopted.
The motion is that the report be adopted. There's a request for declarations. I will allow the DA.
Thank you, Madam Chair. A small and enthusiastic crowd, it sounds. Madam Chair, the Democratic Alliance condemns the incompetence and maladministration of the administrators of the pension fund, the vendor pension fund. The injustices inflicted on members of the fund should never have happened in a democratic South Africa and is yet another blemish on the South African democratic miracle. It is some 20 years that members of the vendor pension fund have been made to suffer injustice, and there cannot be any further delays. Already the first deadline of the 15th of December 2017, set by the Standing Committee on Finance for a report on the matter from the Minister of Finance, has long since passed. It took 5 years for the special report on the Public Protector to be referred to the Standing Committee on Finance on the 23rd of January 2017. The Standing Committee on Finance has correctly recommended that recommendations in the reports of the Public Protector must be implemented as a matter of urgency. The DA supports the report of the Standing Committee of Finance.
Thank you. EFF.
Ndiyaliwa mdzirachidulo vaulise kathina vathu ayani ngei rine vadzangano la EFF rikuima na ripoto hiyo ipuwa nga va Standing Committee cha masheleni angano parliamenteni rikuri vashumi vothe ve vashuma kha muvhuso wa kale wa Venda he tshelede dzavho dza vha dzi songo dzudzanyedza dza vha dzi khou ngalangadziwa nga muvhuso wa ANC. Rina va EFF ri swika nga 2014 fhano ra lingedza uri thendelano ya vho advocate Madonsela ya uri vha wane tshelede dzavho i tevhedziwe. Rina mbilelo khulwane nga maanḓa musi ri tshi vhona muvhuso wa ANC u tshi dzhia u ongolowa kha eḽi fhungo. Zwino ri vhathu vhoṱhe vha Venḓa vho tsa vha tshi gonya na mabambiri vha tshi khou lingedza uri vha wane idzi dzi tshelede dzavho. Na rine ra lingedza u ṅwala marifhi manzhi uri vha vhathu vha wane tshelede dzavho. Zwino ri khou fulufhedzisa vhathu vhoṱhe vhashumi vha shuma kha muvhuso wa Venḓa na vhoṱhe vhe vha lovheliwa uri tshelede dzavho vha funa u dzi wana nga tshipidi ngauri he masheleni ndi avho a vha fanela. Zwihuluhulu ri khou dovha ra ri vha muhasho wa zwa masheleni kha vha ye vha kwame vhathu vhashumiswa vhoṱhe vhe vha tshi khou shumela hei tshelede ya Venḓa uri vha vha ṱalutshedze uri zwi khou tshimbilisa hani ngori hei tshelede ndi kale zwi na 24 years vha khou ima uri i khunyelele kha vhathu. Vhaṅwe vhathu vho lovha a vha tsheo fhano vhaṅwe vha sala vha zwi wana nga nṱhani uri tshelede vho nga i wana. Zwone ri khou ri sa EFF ri ḓo lingedza uri ri sale murahu ḽi fhungo u swika vha tshi wana masheleni avho. Ri khou ri na thusa president vho Mabuza vha ḽi tevhelele ḽi fhungo ngori ndi vhone vhane vha muhulwane wa government business ngori ndi kale ḽi fhungo ḽi si khou tshimbila vhathu vha tshi sa vha tshi gonya. Zwino ri khou ri riṋe sa EFF ri khou tika wo muvhigo uri vhathu vha wane tshelede dzavho nga tshipidi hu si na u ongolowa ngori ho funa hedzi tshelede dzo wanela nga December 2017. Zwino ri khou kholwa uri heḽi fhungo ḽi khou phasa na musi parliamenteni ri khou ri vhathu hayani kha vha takale tshelede dzavho vha ḓo dzi wana ndayandoni.
Ro leboha. IFP, Honorable Hlengwa.
Ngiyathokoza ukuqoshithwa umhlonishwa sihlalo. The consolidated list of complainants in this matter places the number of approximately 7,000 people who were victims of state maladministration that occurred during the amalgamation of the vendor pension fund and the first privatization scheme pre-1994 before the government employees pension fund came into effect. Many of the complainants, who are all well above their retirement age, have since been penniless and many have already passed away. Almost 25 years later, and only because of the diligent work of the former public protector, Advocate Thuli Madonsela, in her public protector report 18 of 2011-2012, and more recently, in the special report number 15 of 2016-17, is this matter finally coming to a resolution. In the 2011-2012 report, the public protector found there to be clear maladministration where government mishandled the privatization of the Vembe pension fund, and clear prejudice was found to have been suffered by the complainants. In her special report 2016-2017, the public protector directed the Director General of Finance to submit an action plan to redress the wrong and damages directly suffered by the complainants. This plan was submitted to the Portfolio Committee, who agreed that the recommendations of the reports of the public protector must be actioned without any delay. Honorable House Chairperson, our democracy is founded upon the principle of an accountable and responsive state. Citizens are entitled to just administrative action that is lawful, reasonable, and procedurally fair, and the state must promote efficient administration. Therefore, the IFP supports this report and the steps to be taken to ensure adequate redress and relief to all the complainants. I thank you, Honorable Chairperson.
Sithokoze mhlonishwa. Honorable Imam, NFP.
Thank you, Honorable House Chair. Let me also say welcome to the Deputy President of the country and all honorable members. Once again, we are here to welcome a report as a result of challenges that we may have experienced, one of which is poor administration and maladministration, which has resulted in a great injustice against our people, especially the poorest of the poor. Now, Honorable Chairperson, I don't want to stand here and find excuses other than to say that the mechanisms that we are now putting in place, and I'm glad that the Minister is here, the mechanisms that we are putting in place and the commitment that must come from the Minister and the Department cannot be overemphasized. This matter has been going on and on and on for a very, very long time. The oversight role that is going to be played by the committee also is very, very important, in that they need to ensure that this matter was dealt with timeously, and that also this process does not lead to abuse, especially in the forms of claims. And we all know that in times like this, we will have many, many claims. One needs to ensure that we verify these claims to ensure that those that are going to be compensated are duly entitled to them. We also want to highlight one very, very important factor, and that is the role of National Treasury in this. National Treasury has been mandated to provide the funds and the resources in order to complete this process. So we are calling on National Treasury to ensure that they comply in terms of that and make the necessary resources available so justice could be done in this matter. The National Freedom Party supports the report tabled here today.
Thank you very much, Honorable Sheikh Imam. Honorable Majisha Cope.
Thank you very much. Chairperson, the Constitution requires of government to be caring and responsive. The sorry saga of the privatization of vendor government pension fund is a nightmarish story of a callous, indifferent, and merciless government. It is extremely sad that former civil servants of the then vendor government have been without their retirement benefits since 1992 to date. This as a consequence of maladministration. Some 25 years later, the pensioners involved have not only been deprived of their rightful money, but their constitutional rights to social security and dignity have also been violated. And this, despite some of the affected members having traveled to Gambia, to the capital in Gambia, that's Banjul, to advocate for the release of their pension monies at a meeting of the African Union's Commission on People's Rights. And despite the public protector's findings in their favor in 2011, while Scope notes the remedial actions proposed and that the Standing Committee undertakes to monitor its implementation, we wish to emphasize that we rise to say to all the pensioners whose pension funds are basically directed at looking after the working class and the poor, in particular, in those particular areas of a country, that our government has not done enough, and therefore more has got to be done after a quarter of a century. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ra leboga Mokoni. ANC, Mama Mahlangu.
Thank you, Chairperson, Ministers, Deputy Ministers, Deputy President of the country and that of the ANC. Thank you very much. Chairperson, let me start by saying, for the first time since 2008, I can firmly and without fear of contradiction, I once worked with my former president, Honorable Madish. For the first time, since ke fihla mo, o thoma o bolela ntwa o kwagala gore nkile wa ba former president ya ka ya COSATU. Ke a leboga. I'm proud. Ha ke na ditlhong gore nkile wa ba president ya ka ya COSATU. Honorable Liz Mazambane.
Order, Chair. Honorable Mahlangu, take your seat. On what point are you rising, Honorable Member?
Rule 96.
There's no point of order under Rule 96.
Can I suggest that
Honorable Member
Mahlangu can join
Honorable
COPE
Member, please. That's
follow
not
her
a point
president
of
of
order.
COSATU.
I'm going to switch off your mic. That's not a point of order. Continue, Honorable Member.
Yes. Thank you, Honorable Chairperson, for protecting
Honorable
me.
Chairperson. Honorable Chairperson.
Honorable Member, on what rule are you rising?
92, Honorable Chairperson.
Thank you. Continue.
Honorable Thengiwe, rise on Rule 96 that speaks about the quorum of the House.
Honorable
Just
Member,
to
we have
disturb a
already
member?
ruled. We have already ruled on that one. Continue, Honorable Mahlangu. I'm not going to allow
Chair.
you for a dialogue.
Anyway, there's no quorum,
Member,
Honorable
please.
Thandi.
Honorable Member, please. Continue, Honorable Mahlangu.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. Honorable Liz, we must not make a mistake and misinform the public, thinking that the vendor pension fund that I'm talking about is something that happened during our democratic era. Honorable Member Obuyagu, EFF, I think you can agree with me. Coming from vendor and coming from the history. In my previous life, I know. I'm also a product of the homeless system. And that system, we know, Uguti, iyo eskosele le problem esinayo namhlanje. Ke yona itirileng hore re be le problem ya go tshwana le We know hore batho ba be ba gola bjang, ba be ba sa gole, in an organized manner. That is why it's difficult for this government of the ANC gore ba track down information, data information e tlo verifyang gore the beneficiaries tse tshwanetseng ba kry tšhelete ke bona ka nnete na. Gobane re ka se no ntšha tšhelete re no e ntšha fela re sa tsebe gore re fa mang. So honorable leave ha o bolela ke kgopela gore o tiše o bontshe gore o ikgontišiše gore taba eo
Honorable
Can I ask a member a question?
Honorable Mahlangu, they would like to ask you a question. Are you ready for a question?
Yes, I am.
Continue,
My
honorable
question
member.
is, if it is not the ANC government, why did it take the public protector to tell you that there is maladministration? Surely that reveals your own incompetency as government.
Are you
since
answering
1994.
now?
No, it's a question. Haven't you
Okay.
been to an exam?
Continue, honorable member, and answer the question.
I'll respond to the statement. It's not a question, it's a statement. And I'll respond to the statement. Honorable Ndlozi, if you were of my age group or belong to my history, you'll understand what I'm talking about. It is the ANC government that made sure the processes, the public protector. They will go to public protector and complain. And it took us that much time. But then I'll understand because it's you, Honorable Ndlozi. I will understand there are things that ukas catch up in this on. I want to get our balances. So, honorable members, Rataba Hore, public protector will answer this special report. I read the recommendation, and this ANC government listened to that. And as a result of those recommendations, we had a task team, Nanli GPA, Abilengli GPSA, Abilengli Treasury, Abilengli Public Protector itself.
Can I raise order?
Honorable Mahlangu, take your seat. On what rule are you rising, honorable member?
I'm rising on Rule 92.
Continue, honorable member.
The member is abusing her age to bully.
Honorable member, that is not a point.
You
That's
can't use
not-
your age
That's
when
not
you
a
ask
point
a
of
question.
order.
He's a
Honorable
member of
member,
Parliament, you cannot
that's not-
abuse
I'm
him
going
with
to
your
switch
age.
off your mic.
You are an ageist. What is this? Can you answer questions here?
Continue, honorable member.
Unfortunately, like Cinda, I am late, honorable member. I can't help you. It's a benefit equivalent, Leon. Honorable Chairperson, we have had a consultation, hearings together with Treasury, and we are convinced and happy with the work so far that has been done. We know also as a committee that we expected Treasury to give us a report in as far as the implementation is concerned, given a due date by the 15th of 2017. But then there's also an information that one needs to share with the public why are we still having a problem of implementation or implementing what we've agreed upon as a committee and the task team. There has also been a request from Treasury because of the load of work. Muspikara baya go Treasury ba ile khopela nako gore ba okeletse nako ra tseba gore ba okeletse nako fela ra khopela Treasury Minister Nene gore le your team gore we should not take for granted the patience of our people because it's not elastic. Sometimes. So we should not take their patience for granted. We must make sure we fast track the issue of implementing because government, they don't have a choice, they don't have a means and even money for them to fight this battle. Honorable Chairperson of the House, as the ANC, we are making this current call to the National Treasurer and the Government Pension Fund Agency, JIPA, to expedite the finalization of this matter. Because The ANC is of the view that it is unacceptable that the claimant in this matter had to wait almost 20 years without a resolution of their plight, and further delays will not be tolerated. I hope that is clear. The ANC, through the Standing Committee of Finance, will exercise oversight of the implementation of the recommendations and ensure that necessary relief to restore the dignity and ensure the fulfillment of the right to social security of the concerned Vembe Pension Fund group. The implementation plan submitted by the Minister of Finance sets clear time frames for the implementation of the recommendations of the Public Protector and the committee. We are therefore, honorable members, appreciating the ANC government for setting out the processes gore bana ba bo rena le batho ba go rena ge balla ba kwagale le gona bjale re sa itlama re le ANC gore re tla make sure as a standing committee gore we are going to make sure gore ra oversight gore dia implementiwa le kra di tšhelete tša lena ka mokgwa go tshwanetseng ka gona lang le ya bo le tshwane le tleng go ANC government le di institutions tse di re di beileng le leng gobane ngwana wa sa le o khwela tharing
Mhlomphegi nako ya lena e fedile. Order, honorable members. The motion is that the report be adopted. Are there any objections? No objections agreed to. I will now ask the secretary to read the fourth order.
Consideration of report of Portfolio Committee on Water and Sanitation on oversight visit to Limpopo Province.
I will now request the chairperson of the committee, Honorable Johnson, to introduce the report. There is a chair here for the speakers. Please assist me in doing that.
Thank you, Chair. In 2017, the Committee on Water and Sanitation undertook an oversight visit to Limpopo. The oversight visit considered the following activities: the verification of water supply to communities in Zanin that petitioned Parliament to intervene to the water access challenges in 2015. Water allocation to emerging black farmers in the Great Letaba area in Zanin, the resettlement and compensation of communities that were relocated during the construction of Nandoni Dam, and the Kiani water supply project. The following are the key findings on the oversight. The water supply in Zanin is not completely resolved as some communities are still without water. However, a number of projects were underway to ensure that water supply to these communities is available. Projects that are underway are the boreholes drilling, the water treatment plants refurbishment, and upgrades and pipelines, among many others. The black emerging farmers do not have access to water. The department is unable to assist these farmers as the white farmers upstream are blocking and redirecting water supply to their farms. The water allocation reform process is not working for black emerging farmers in Zanin. The officials lack the will to implement this program. The relocated communities from the Nandoni Dam are not fully compensated, and the department is lacking these communities as the processes are delayed. The Kiani water supply project is marred by escalating costs, delays in payment to contractors, illegal water connections, vandalism, and the theft of water infrastructure, and the lack of capacity to operate and maintain the water infrastructure in Mopani. Lastly, to this end, the committee made a number of recommendations with regards to each of the issues identified, and all of those are carried in the ATC dated the 22nd of November in 2017. I submit.
Thank you, Honorable Johnson. I now recognize the Chief Whip of the Majority Party, Honorable Deputy Chief Whip.
Thank you, Honorable House Chairperson. I move that the report be adopted.
The motion is that the report be adopted, but there is a request for declarations. The DA.
Thank you, Chairperson. The Portfolio Committee initially visited Limpopo in 2015 to address the concerns raised in a petition by the community of the Greater Zanin area in relation to non-availability of water supply in the affected wards in the area. As a follow-up to the 2015 oversight, the Portfolio Committee undertook an oversight visit to Limpopo in August 2017 and based its oversight mandate within the following objectives: to receive a progress report on whether the 2015 commitments to the petition was honoured, and also visit emerging farmers and the Giani Water Project. Chairperson, it was found that interventions between 2015 and 2017 did not show any improvement in the delivery of water in the Mopani District Municipality. 63% of boreholes were non-functional. The crisis in the affected area is not being addressed. Money was spent with little benefit seen by the communities. Lack of consultation on projects in the affected communities create further tension, with people arguing that it is far better to make use of illegal connections rather than to rely on legal processes. The Department of Agriculture and the African Farmers Association informed the Portfolio Committee that the Department of Water and Sanitation is not addressing water rights and access to water to black emerging farmers. Chairperson, one of the biggest running projects of the department is the Giani project. This controversial project is also investigated by the Special Investigating Unit. LTE Consulting, a Keider company that is closely related to the ANC and Minister Nomvula Mokonyane, also received tenders. This company is also under investigation. The results of the SIU investigation were referred to the National Prosecuting Authority, and the SIU informed the Portfolio Committee they will continue to pursue this matter and see them through till prosecution. The Giani project started on 140 million budget and increased to more than 1 billion rand. The end of this project is still not in sight, and billions more will need to be spent to complete this project. Lepele Northern Water, that was appointed by the Minister as the implementing agent, indicated that due to non-payment by the department, this project is constantly delayed. The Giani Water Purification Plant, opened in 2014 by Mr. Jacob Zuma to increase water to the community and villages, is no longer working due to poor construction, management and maintenance. Chairperson, I can't say this better than the late Honourable Tanya Baker. This is part of the legacy of Minister Nomvula Mokonyane that left the finances, management and infrastructure of the Department of Water and Sanitation in a deeper, darker and messier state than any one of its abandoned pit latrines. I thank you.
Thank you. On EFF, Honourable Kaula.
Sihlalo ohloniphekile, kubalulekile ukuthi uhulumeni abe nohlelo oluphusile lokuqinisekisa ukuthi ingqalasizinda yezamanzi isezingeni ukuze sithuthukise izwe lethu kanye nemiphakathi yakithi. Amanzi ayilungelo lawo wonke umuntu, ngale ukuthi uhulumeni abakhetha abantu. Ohambeni lwethu siye lapha eLimpopo, nesaku into esayibona lapha na kuyacaca ngokusobala ukuthi umnyango wezamanzi ngaphansi kobuholi bukaNgqongqoshe wangaphambili uNomvula Mankonyane abuyishaya indiva eyokunikeza abantu amanzi ahlanzekile ngendlela efanele, bekudliwa izimali kuphela.
Isibonelo nje lapha ya eMopane district. Izikhulu zomkhandlu zahlukileka zancama ukusinika imininingwane ngezinhlelo abanazo zokubhekana nenkinga yokushoda kwamanzi emiphakathini eyakhele lwamkhandlu. Umnyango awunaso isisombululo sokubhekana ngqo nenkinga yamanzi esifundazweni saseZimpombo. Kunomkhandlu waseMopane owodwa nje. Abantu bathembele kumapayipi ukuze bathole amanzi. Kwalawo mapayipi mancane akanawo ngisho amanzi. Alukho nohlelo oluvuselela amapayipi angasebenzi. Abantu bagcina bezixhumela ngendlela yabo amanzi bawankonkotha. Okunye kakhulu ukuthi umnyango kanye nomkhandlu yile nkinga yomfula okufanele ngabe usiza abantu ababalimi lakho omakepisi lapha yana nabantu abasezantsi emalamlelo. Lo mfula instead ukuthi uhambe ezantsi kubona bakwazi ukuthi bawujike. Masithi siyabuza ukuthi ngabe kusemthethweni ukuthi lo mfula ushintshwe. Uthothi kulomnyango ka minister unomvula Mankonyana ayikho impendulo. Lapha yana eNandoni. eNandoni kunabantu la from 2014 sifika la eParliament ababekhala ngokuthi basuswa lapha ngenhloso kwakhiwa idam. La dam njoba ngikhuluma nani abantu babelima kubona benezihlahla zalo benamangcwaba lapha. Laba abantu kuyimanje baze bakhokhelwe imali isinxephezelo nabanikezwa izindlu ziyawo. Kuyimanje mase sibuya la sesizobuza ukuthi laba bantu sobesaya kwi-oversight basijahe bezositshela into eyodwa na. Kwavela ukuthi ikhona imali ewu-30 million. Manje le mali esingazi ukuthi ngempela kwenzakalani ngayo. Bese kuthi CFO yakhohlisa iParliament la. Ngaye njalo uminister beyikhona kuqala. Wazothi akekho lo muntu lo awuyena oyi-CFO kanti babhizi ngale ngemuva basayina amacheki benza umkonkothelo. Ngaleyo ndlela sithi sikhathele bakithi abantu bakithi abathi bamela abantu abamnyama bebe bazimele bona. Njoba ngikhuluma nani nje awekho amanzi lapha yana. Abantu bakithi amanzi abanawo. Ngisho amafama khona lapha kanawo ngisho amanzi okufanele ngabe abantu bayalima bathatha amanzi bachela ngawo lawo manzi ayathathwa kodwa abamhlophe banawo amanzi. Lo hulumeni we-ANC abantu funa bawubona ukuthi awunendaba nabantu abamnyama. Inkinga yabo nje ukuyidlela imali yabo. 2019 abantu abavotela i-EFF bazobona.
Siyaxolisa isikhathi siphelile. The next speaker, Inkosi yami ucebe khulu Hlonishwa.
Thank you, Chairperson.
Sorry, uyangiphoxa kodwa. Wabanjani othi abakho, abanjani ongabona abakho?
Water is life for our planet and for all the living organisms that reside upon it. The right to sufficient access to water is constitutionally enshrined as such must be provided to the citizens of our country in all areas of the 9 provinces situated in South Africa. Communities resident within 7 wards in Limpopo who have been without access to water petitioned the Portfolio Committee already in 2015 and again in 2017, and the challenge to this day remains unresolved. Upon committee oversight visit to the area, numerous challenges were raised by the district municipality, which claimed that it had been facing an uphill struggle. Infrastructure development and provision of services were being stifled by vandalism, aging in infrastructure, non-functioning boreholes, theft through illegal connections, and the presence of low groundwater table, which contributed to the difficulty of borehole supply. Bulk water infrastructure supply to 7 villages in Ward 26 was not effectively completed. Pipes were left exposed in the communities, which led to illegal connections being made and great damage to the infrastructure. Consolidated effort, despite the best intentions, are leaving little or no good rewards. This is especially so when one looks at the water services grant, the municipal infrastructure grant, and regional bulk infrastructure grant, which were intended to assist with the provision of sustainable water supply in our rural communities and the entire water value chain. Emerging farmers in the Zanin area are being detrimentally affected by the continuous delay in raising the Zanin dam wall, as well as by billing for services that are not being rendered because of dilapidated and non-functioning canals, boreholes, and irrigation schemes. We are a water-scarce country, and the scarcity is increasing through climate change. We must build resilient infrastructure and ensure effective service delivery. The IFP actually supports the report, with the hope that something will be done in order to assist the communities out there that are in need of services. Thank you.
Sithokoze. Isikhulumi esilandelayo umhlonishwa Majaki.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, honorable members. Referring to the oversight report by the Portfolio Committee on Water and Sanitation in Limpopo, we are able to see that water has an immediate and lasting effect on infrastructure development and living conditions of many people. In Cathcart, residents needed to resort to protest action as their promised RDP houses were delayed due to lack of water and sanitation. The lack of water infrastructure in this country denies people the right to housing. The people are left with no option but to use the right of protest in order for government to listen and react to their needs. In the report by the Portfolio Committee on Water and Sanitation in Limpopo, we see that people are so desperate to access water that the water supply have been, as reported by members, illegally accessing. Water in South Africa is becoming a scarce and valuable resource. Government needs to recognize the great and desperate need to secure this resource for all citizens, as water is a basic human right, and government should not fail to provide this at all costs. The UDM chairperson proposes the following, based on the report, that government pays all contractors on time in order to secure that these contractors are not placed at risk with their creditors. Their services are delivered on time, and that the cost of production due to stoppages does not escalate and place further cost to the state. Security measures are put in place to protect vulnerable and exposed water supply materials and components. Thirdly, government must speed up service delivery of water supply so that people have access to their basic human right of water, as well as reduce the effects that the lack of water has on the rights of the people. And finally, a proper planning process is undertaken so that government is better able to identify the lifespan of operational materials and be prepared for maintenance of these water treatment works. The UDM believes that water is the primary and basic nourishment of the nation. We call on all citizens to closely monitor government when dealing with the water project, as water is a gateway for further development and prosperity. The UDM supports the report. I thank you.
Thank you very much. Die volgende spreker is achtbare lid Carter.
Thank you, Chairperson. Chair, report on the oversight visit to Limpopo is a sad tale of failing service delivery and of a callous, indifferent, and merciless government. What happened to the principle of government of a people, by the people, and for the people? Chair, it is beyond belief that following an oversight visit in 2015 by the Portfolio Committee to the Greater Tsenin area to address water delivery concerns raised in a petition to Parliament by the community, 55 out of 87 boreholes in the area still remain non-functional. This is a serious indictment against government to deliver upon a basic human right. Now, COPE expresses its grave concern at the delays being experienced in effecting payments due to contractors in respect of the Guyani water treatment works and bulk water supply project by the Department of Water and Sanitation. Can you imagine what the impact of a non-payment of 600 million rand has on these contractors, implementing agents and suppliers involved, and on the cash flow and reserves of a Lepele Northern Water Board? Now, with respect of a visit to the Nandoni Dam and the 32 villages affected by the construction of a dam, the Congress of the People is shocked that despite the remedial action outlined by the Public Protector in a 2009 and 2010 report, and despite an oversight visit by the committee in 2015 to the communities still do not have access to water supply from the dam some 15 years after its completion. Compensation due to the families that were removed for the development of the dam has still not been finalized. That the affected families have still not received title to the land to which they were relocated, and that matters relating to the substandard housing provided as a consequence of the relocation have still not been resolved. Now, Chair, this report points to an incapable, failing, callous, indifferent, and a merciless government. Thank you.
Thank you. The ANC?
Thank you, Chair. Indeed, oversight works. We now know where the challenges are. All what the department has to do is to work. 80% of the water in that part of the country goes to the farmers. That brings an opportunity for the reuse of our water resource, especially for your irrigation. The land reform without water supply is tantamount to reversing the gains that land reform seeks to achieve. We still have a 1956 Water Act that prohibits you as a new beneficiary of our land reform to continue using that water. For that water, it is traded separately. A point is made as part of the recommendations that service providers must be paid on time, and that shall go a long way in growing these contractors. Failure to do such, you are as good as killing those service providers, especially the black ones who are literally living on new money where there is no old money. Maintenance is key to sustainable use of our infrastructure. We have a case in point where we read about what you have in Cuba today. An old infrastructure that has withstood all the transgressions by the US governments of the past, and that continue to do so even today. What Government Department of Water and Sanitation must do is to do more with less. Given all the budgetary constraints that we have this day and age, the new innovations are intact in changing as to how we have to do things differently. A case in point here would be your typical situation where the infrastructure continues to be your brick and mortar, yet there exists your new innovations on the same 50 megaliter being produced out of that infrastructure using brick and mortar, which will cost easily a sum of 400 million rand. But with package plants, you can easily go to a figure of no more than 50 million rand. Just to cite but one example. This is a case in point wherein our officials, minister in the department continue to work like it is the same old way like in the past. wherein they would go out of their way, and we have our own suspicions as a committee, that these officials, they are literally at the back pockets of some of these service providers. Your consulting engineers will always go for that project which is no more than 500 million rand. Unlike if it was a 50 million rand project, precisely because of the fees that are earned out of any specific project. Hence then we say we need to appreciate the department officials to do more with less, given the new innovations. Once again, the ANC supports this report. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The motion is that the report be adopted. Are there any objections? No. Honorable Kaula?
Ngiyabonga. Kanti ngempela minister uzoboshwa nini ngoba
Honorable
amanzi awekho.
Kaula, are you ready?
Uzoboshwa nini?
Honorable member, you are out of
Lalela-ke,
order.
engikushoyo
Honorable
ngoba
member.
ngifuna ukuba siyayichitha le.
Thank you.
Akaboshwe manje
Honorable
Nomvula.
member, you are out of order. Thank you.
too.
Continue. The EFF, the objection will be noted. We now on motions without notice. Any member of the ANC who wish to raise a motion without notice? I believe that on your documents you have got numbers. That's what I've been told. Thank you very much. Let's work according to that.
Number one.
Thank you very much, Honorable Member.
Thanks a lot, Deputy Chairperson. The African National Congress moves without notice that the House acknowledges the announcement by the Minister of Health on Sunday, the 4th March 2018, that bologna and products from Enterprise Factory in Polokwane, Limpopo are the source of the world's largest outbreak of listeria. Notes that more than 16 environmental samples from Enterprise Polokwane Factory tested positive for the listeriosis the word is a bit difficult, genes, strain ST6. Further notes of the results from the factory were confirmed at midnight on Saturday, 3rd March 2018, at the National Institute for Communicable Diseases, as being the strain to blame for the outbreak that killed 27% of patients in South Africa. Understands that the National Consumer Commission had issued a manufacturer involved with food recall notices. Further understands that listeriosis affects mostly the elderly, those with compromised immune systems, such as people with AIDS and diabetes and newborn babies. Recognize that it has been claimed more than 170.
Thank you. Your time has now expired.
Thanks.
I now put the question. Are there no objections to the motion? No objection agreed to. We now go to the DA.
Thank you, Chair. I hereby move on behalf of the Democratic Alliance that this House notes that in February 2017, 8 girls absconded, some still not found, from the Domatea Child and Youth Care Centre in Edenvale. Also notes that 4 of the girls were taken to Hillbrow and the other 4 to Alexandra, where they were exposed to child trafficking and drug syndicates, and that children who absconded and later returned were not brought before the Children's Court for assessments as required by the Children's Act, nor was the Department of Social Development informed. Acknowledges that the Democratic Alliance has been informed of other horror stories such as, amongst others, girls being raped, underage children being engaged in sexual intercourse, and children engaging in drug abuse. Recognizes that the South African Human Rights Commission has revealed that the centre has not been quality assured by the Department of Social Development for more than a year, and that there is no complaints register in which to formally record complaints and incidents as required by law, and condemns the abuse of children and mismanagement of child and youth care centres, which are intended to be places of safety for minors, and calls for an urgent investigation so that those responsible may face the full might of the law. I so move. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any objections to the motion?
Chair, the ANC object to this unresearched motion.
If the motion then falls off, it will now become a notice of a motion. EFF?
Thank you, Chair. I rise on behalf of the EFF that the House note the decision by the Senate of the University of Cape Town to strongly recommend the appointment of Professor Mamokgethi Sidati Phakeng as the Vice Chancellor. Congratulate Professor Mamokgethi Sidati Phakeng on this important recognition and consideration for the position of Vice Chancellor of the UCT. Welcome the decision as not only long overdue, but well-deserved recognition and a meaningful step in the right direction towards true decolonization of institutions of higher learning. Recognize Professor Sidati Phakeng as a fabulous academic, fabulous black and proud South Africa, and a full professor with a PhD in mathematics education. Acknowledge that Professor Sidati Phakeng is a testament to the struggle of Lillian Ngoyi, Francis Bard, Albertina Sisulu, Miriam Makeba, Charlotte Makleke, Ruth Mumpati, Zondeni, Veronica Sobukwe, Mama Winnie Madikizela Mandela, and many other Mbogodos. Further acknowledge that her appointment will inspire generations to come to believe and live with ambitions as a black and proud, fabulous child. Celebrate Professor Mamokgethi Sidati Phakeng. Phambili Mbogodo.
Thank you. Are there any objections to the motion? No objection, agreed to. ANC?
Thank you, Chairperson. The African National Congress moves to notice that the House welcomes the recognition and inauguration of Minister Naledi Pandor by the Netherlands leading university as an honorary world visiting professor of astronomy for development on Monday, 26 February 2018. Notes that Minister Pandor gave a ceremonial lecture on astronomy for development on Monday, the 26th February, followed by an interdisciplinary symposium on science diplomacy and development at the Leiden University campus in The Hague on 27 February. Understands that Minister Pandor's appointment as Leiden University's honorary visiting professor for science and development is in recognition of an inspiring and charismatic promotion of science and astronomy in South Africa, Africa and globally. Recalls that Professor Jan Oort, whom the professorship is named after, was the director of Leiden Observatory for many years and has played a pioneering role in many aspects of modern astronomy. Believe that in awarding Minister Pandor, the Leiden University considered her as an inspirational and charismatic ambassador of science as a tool for development, particularly in the field of astronomy. Thanking the executive authority of the University of Leiden for honoring one of our dedicated servants of the people, Minister Naledi Pandor, and congratulates Minister Pandor on adding one more accolade in her achievements. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any objections to the motion? No objections. Agreed to. IFP?
Thank you, Chairperson. I hereby move without notice on behalf of the IFP that the House congratulates His Excellency Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi, the President of the Inkatha Freedom Party, for receiving the Taiwan Friendship Medal of Diplomacy in recognition of his efforts to promote good relations between Taiwan and South Africa. Notes that in his acceptance remarks he made mention of the appropriateness of the medal being called a friendship medal and not just a diplomacy medal, because although his work has been done at a political level, it has always been done out of the bond of friendship. Acknowledges that the Prince has enjoyed a long friendship with Taiwan and the Taiwanese, having opened a trade office when he served as Chief Minister of the KwaZulu government, securing economic growth and development for the people of KwaZulu through his valuable partnership. Further acknowledges and sincerely appreciates the attendance at the event last week of political party leaders and senior representatives from various political parties in this parliament, and finally wishes that the productivity, work ethic and ingenuity of the Taiwanese, which the Prince so admires, rubs off onto our people and sees us realizing our collective goals for our country. Thank you.
Thank you. Any objections to the motion? None. We now go to NFP.
Thank you, House Chairperson. I move without notice on behalf of the NFP that this House notes that there's been an ongoing strike at the University of Zululand, whereby students demand better accommodation and also have concerns about NSFAS. At the same time, employees have been demanding better salaries and better conditions of employment. And recognizing that the meeting that were held between Portfolio Committee of Higher Education and the University of Zululand management went well, but it is clear that resolutions were not actioned by the university management. Wherefore, this House resolved to call upon the Department of Higher Education and the University of Zululand management to speedily find a solution that will bring about normality at the university. Further calls on students to desist from destroying the university property. I so move.
Thank you. Are there any objections? No objections, agreed to. We now go to the ANC. ANC.
Thank you, House Chairperson. The ANC moves without notice that the House notes that 25 people perished in a fire at a drug rehabilitation clinic in the Azerbaijani capital Baku early on Friday, 2nd March 2018. Further notes that 3 of the 34 people that were rescued from the blaze were hospitalized. Understands that a criminal case has been opened by the prosecution authorities and an investigation team has been established. Recognizes that the fire completely destroyed a wooden building in which bedridden patients found themselves unable to escape. Recalls that the ex-Soviet Caucasus nation has a history of large-scale casualties as a result of fire in residential buildings and elsewhere. Further recalls that in October 1995, 289 people died in a metro fire in Baku, in the world's deadliest subway disaster that was caused by outdated Soviet equipment, and conveys its condolences to the government of Azerbaijan and families of the deceased. I thank you.
Thank you. Are there any objections to the motion? No objections, agreed to. UDM.
Siyabulela, Mama. I move without notice on behalf of the United Democratic Movement that the House notes that engineer and innovator Clement Mukwanene has been selected as South Africa's international representative at the Shivas Venture Competition in May 2018 in Amsterdam. Further notes that his achievement to provide cheap, sustainable, clean and affordable electricity through his vehicle energy harvesting system by installing an overlay on an existing road, extracting the pressure and transferring it to the side of the road in a way similar to a wind turbine that then creates electricity. The result is the electricity that is at a much lower affordable price than the 90% of South African energy which is currently generated by coal fire-powered stations which have huge environmental costs. Applauds the initiative and this great idea which has the potential to improve the quality of the poor by making electricity affordable, calls on government to actively engage with Mr. Clement Mukwanene in order to integrate his clean energy VHE system to the national grid. Wishes Mukwanene as a representative of South Africa the very best as he prepares to compete against other global entrants in May 2018. I so move.
Thank you. Are there any objections to the motion? No objections. Agreed to. FF plus. Ni. DA.
I hereby move on behalf of the Democratic Alliance that this House notes that rhino poaching has reached critical levels in our country. Also notes that last week, 7 butchered rhinos were discovered in a single day in the KwaZulu-Natal flagship Imfolozi Game Reserve. Further notes that the Pilanesberg Game Reserve is also suffering huge losses. Records that 4 rhinos have been poached on different reserves in the Eastern Cape during the last 2 weeks, and calls on all relevant government departments and ministries to revisit this national crisis with the urgency that it deserves. I so move.
Thank you. Any objections to the motion? None. The motion is therefore agreed to. EFF?
I hereby rise on behalf of the economic freedom fighters that the House note the shocking state of Tower Psychiatric Hospital in Fort Beaufort in Eastern Cape. Further note that as a result of this, since 2010, 90 patients have died at the facility. Acknowledge that a lot of what we know about the hospital would not be possible without the efforts of Dr. Kiran Shukeri, a psychiatrist at the facility who laid complaints about the hospital's condition with the Health Ombudsman, the South African Human Rights Commission, and the South African Society of Psychiatrists. Recognize that patients are not fed properly, do not have proper toilet facilities, and are generally neglected by staff at the hospital. Further recognize that there is no specialized medical care facility at the hospital, and that there's no doctor on duty on weekends. Note that because of this, staff continue to resign as they cannot be part of this human rights violation. Realize that if nothing is done, we will have another life as a Dimeni on our hands. Only this time, we as Parliament, we have been forewarned. Further realize that if nothing is done, we become culpable in this crime and should therefore ensure that PC on Health inspect the facility and address the problems facing the hospital. I so move.
Thank you. Are there any objections to the motion? No objections. Agreed to. ANC?
Thank you very much, Chair. The African National Congress move without notice that the House notes with sadness the death of at least 19 illegal migrants in the injury, about 60 most from Africa, in a truck accident in the Libya town of Bani Walid, approximately 189 kilometers southeast of capital Tripoli. Further notes that the truck was carrying estimated 300 refugees and migrants when it crashed in the northwest of the North Africa country on Wednesday, 14 February 2018. Understand that Libya has become the major point of departure for African migrants leaving the country for Europe to search for better life. Further understand that the journey is hazardous, with many crammed into overcrowded vessels in a poor condition operated by human traffickers. Recalls that hundreds have died after the boat overturned in the Mediterranean Sea, and those that remain behind have been subjected to the abuse of the Egyptian detention centers. Remember that many of these centers are controlled by Meridian militaries who control large swaths of the country.
Unfortunately, your time has expired and you have not moved. Can you move? Just move.
I so moved.
Thank you very much. Are there any objections to the motion? No objections. Agreed to. Cope?
Thank you, Chairperson. I hereby move without notice on behalf of the Congress of the People that the House notes the crippling drought that affects the Western Cape water supply and that threatens all sectors of society and the livelihood of the business and agricultural sectors and their employees. Applauds the unselfish act of goodwill of the fruit growers of the Groenland Water Users Association, who released some 10 million cubic meters from their farm dams to augment existing water supplies in the Western Cape supply system. thus pushing further back day zero projections. Appreciates the collective efforts of all affected water consumers to reduce their consumption and calls upon them to continue with their efforts. Implores all spheres of government to ensure a collective and coherent response to the current crisis and the mitigation of future drought and water supply disasters. I so move.
Thank you. Are there any objections to the motion? No objections. Agreed to. ACDP? Near. ANC?
The African National Congress moves without notice that the House notes that Ruth Gous is in line to qualify for the Youth Olympic Games in Buenos Aires in October 2018 after finishing at the top of the list in the African TTR Under-18 competition in Dhaka, Morocco, on Saturday, 2nd March 2018. Further knows that the 14-year-old from Silbai powered their way to first place in the Youth Olympic Games kite boating qualifier. Understands that victory puts Gous in line to be selected as part of Team South Africa for the Youth Olympic Games in Buenos Aires in October 2018. Further understands that Gous put in a fantastic performance, winning 10 of her 12 races to finish as the undisputed champion, and wishes Ruth Gous much more success in her future endeavors. I so move.
Thank you. Any objections to the motion? No more objections. Agreed to. AIC?
Thank you, Chair. I hereby move on behalf of the African Independent Congress that this House notes that Siyabonga Langelihle Ngcobo, a taxi driver, was gruesomely stuffed into the boot of his car, shocked by the barbaric and primitive act of setting alight his car while he was still alive, recognizes the fact that Ngcobo, who was enrolled to further his studies at the level of higher education, was an innate organic scholar who sought to fund his studies. Anguished deleteriously by this sheer silence in various quarters of our society by this cowardice act, regrets that the impasse between meter taxi, taxfire, and Uber has gone unabated with sent intervention, commiserates with the family of Ngcobo in these trying times, and calls upon the relevant portfolios in government to seek an amicable solution on the current impasse. I so move.
Thank you. Are there any objections to the motion? No objections. Agreed to. Ahang SA? Abaron. ANC?
The African National Congress moves without notice that the House notes with sadness the death of a Tanzanian PhD student from the University of Johannesburg, allegedly at the hands of a taxi driver on Friday, 23 February 2018. Understands that colleagues and friends of Baraka Leonard Nafari, a PhD student and research assistant, went to Brixton Police Station to file a missing persons report after he failed to arrive at work. Further understands that the university footage linked the taxi driver to the incident where the taxi driver was seen striking Baraka against the fence of the Sophiatown residence, killing him. Realizes that the taxi driver had made a statement to police and had claimed that Baraka and his friends had weapons and tried to hijack him. Recognizes that the friend who was with Baraka when the taxi driver chased them is consulting with a psychologist and a psychiatrist, as he is still in great shock. Calls upon the South African Police Services and the university to leave no stone unturned in their investigation of this matter, and conveys its condolences to the family and friends of Baraka Nafari. I so move.
Thank you. Are there any objections to the motion? No objections. Agreed to. APC? Abagon. PAC? Aiko. DA?
I hereby move on behalf of the Democratic Alliance that this House notes that the EU Chamber of Commerce and Industry in Southern Africa, representing South Africa's largest trading bloc, released in 2017 a business climate survey which identifies triple BE as a top regulatory challenge to doing business in the country. Further notes that the World Economic Forum's Global Competitive Index for 2016-2017 ranks South Africa 108th out of 144 countries for the burden of government regulation. Also notes that the Promotion and Protection of Investment Bill, now there's a euphemism, which was signed into law in 2015, reduced the rights of foreign and domestic property owners. Notes that the denuding of property rights has not been abated and instead is gathering pace with the unjustified review of Section 25 of the Constitution in order to give wide berth to expropriation without compensation. Acknowledges that South Africa persistently introduces legislation which compromises the ability of business owners to make long-term investment decisions. Even when later scrapped, bills like the Restitution of Land Rights Amendment Bill do irreparable damage to confidence. I urge this House, therefore, to recognize that across departments, the South African legislative environment is engaged in a silent war of attrition against domestic business and foreign investors, and therefore calls for a presidential review into the top 10 regulatory obstacles blocking investment and the rationale for keeping them in place.
Can you move,
Chair?
please?
House Chair?
I so move.
Thank
House
you.
Chair.
Can I finish with this first?
No, it's a quick one. Is it parliamentary to imitate Minister Naledi Pandor?
Amen. Eish.
The EFF
Honorable
objects.
members, are there any objections to the motion? No objection, agreed to.
We object. The
Chair.
EFF objects.
Chair, we object. This motion is ill-informed.
The ANC's objection will now make the motion without notice to fall off and will become a notice of a motion. ANC?
The African National Congress moves without notice that the House notes that South Africa will co-host the 17th World Conference on Tobacco or Health from the 7th to the 9th March 2018 in Cape Town. Further notes that the conference will be held under the theme Uniting the World for a Tobacco-Free Generation and will be the first to be hosted in Africa. Hoping that South Africa's hosting the conference will assist in creating awareness on the harmful effects of tobacco use and the need to intensify tobacco control measures. Recognizing that the conference calls for committed action and provides a platform for governments, civil society organizations, United Nations agencies, international organizations, health workers, and other stakeholders to discuss, share knowledge and experiences, particularly regarding youth and women who are exposed to tobacco use. Believing that the conference outcomes will assist a great deal in campaigns and strengthen movements dealing with harmful effects of tobacco, as well as encouraging South Africans in particular to live a healthy lifestyle, and wishes the conference organizers and participants a successful conference. I so move.
If there are no objections, I put the motion. No objections, agreed to. Honourable members, that concludes motions without notice. The next item on the order paper is member statements. Does any member of the ANC wish to make a statement? The Honourable Fabs.
The African National Congress congratulates young furniture designer Mr. Lwazi Msibi, the winner in the student category at the 5th Annual Furniture Design Competition Awards. Furniture designers from all over the country exhibited their designs at the Homemakers Expo in Johannesburg recently. Now, he had studied Bachelor of Technology and Interior Design at the University of Durban Technology. And it shows never give up. This was the second time he was entering. Now, speaking on the award design concept, Mr. Nshibi said that songa, meaning to fold in isiXhosa, came as an inspiration during his study years when he had to leave home and stay in a residential flat. And Deputy Minister Bulelani Magwanishi, who was speaking there, said the furniture industry is playing a key role in radically transforming South Africa's economy. He added that this was partly due to the fact that it was one of the most labor-intensive and trade-supporting sectors, and if it is promoted correctly, it can significantly contribute to industry development and lead to the beneficiation of raw materials. Mr. Nshibi added that
Honourable Member, your time is now expired.
I thank you.
Thank you. The DA.
Thank you, House Chair. The DA welcomed the Minister's of Health announcement on Sunday that the source of listeriosis has been traced, but it is clear that the primary source of listeriosis still has not been identified. We also appreciated the effort by the National Consumer Commission to issue all the companies involved with the safety recalls notices and suspending the exporting of their goods. But South Africa still needs to be informed as to how the processed food should be disposed of without creating another health hazard. The DA believe that there should be a stricter guidance for international food imports and that the National Food Control Agency should be created in order to ensure the safety of South African people. It is not only the health sector that it is negatively affected, but is far-reaching as the food industry as well as the agriculture industry and various other industries. Currently, the outbreak has claimed more than 180 lives, and the total number of infections stands at more than 900. South African legislation pertaining to food safety and security appears to be inadequate. We are calling on the National Minister to launch a national campaign together with the Department of Agriculture and the Department of Trade and Industry to ensure people have more information about the outbreak of the listeriosis and that they are able to avoid the infection. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The EFF.
The EFF joins the African continent in celebration of the 61st anniversary of the independence of Ghana. The year 1957 will always represent the inauguration of African political freedom characterized by self-determination. In this regard, we remember the founding father of Ghanaians on this crucial day of Pan-African determination, Kwame Nkrumah, who defined Ghanaian freedom and independence to be incomplete until the entire continent is decolonized. On this occasion, in memory of Nkrumah and in marking the 61st anniversary of the Ghanaian independence, we call on Morocco to end its criminal occupation of Western Sahara. We further call on the African Union to reverse its reactionary decision to accept Morocco into the African family of states whilst it acts as a colonizer over Western Sahara. The EFF wishes the people of Ghana well and call on them to join in the wave of economic freedom in our lifetime. Indeed, 61 years later, majority of the people of the continent remain in underdevelopment, poverty, and hunger. These challenges must be confronted through an uncompromising program of economic freedom in our lifetime to complete the genuine decolonization that was initiated by Ghanaians 61 years ago. We call on the land and mineral resources of the continent to be redirected to benefit African people and their economies. We call on financial institutions like banks to be nationalized and forced to invest in the economic activities of native peoples of the continent. Finally, we wish President Nana Akufo-Addo, who is presiding over Ghana today, a long life. We wish him strength in this important chapter of economic freedom in our lifetime, that there must be economic freedom in his lifetime for all Ghanaians. I thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The ANC.
I rise on Rule 92, point of order. Is it parliamentary for the Honourable Member to impersonate Jacob Zuma when he speaks?
House Chair near the door.
Yes, Honourable Member. Just continue.
The ANC has committed itself to speed up the rollout of the special economic zone incentive as one of the means to grow the local economy and ensure job creation. We therefore welcome the construction of the Maluti Apofung Special Economic Zone in the eastern part of the Free State Province. The SEZ is scheduled to begin construction in March 2018 and is expected to produce 255 direct permanent jobs and 420 indirect jobs in the current year. A further 1,700 temporary work opportunities are also expected to be created during the construction phase of these top structures, as was done through Phase 1 Bulk Services Project, which already commenced September last year. The ANC government has initiated special economic zones as geographically designated areas in the country set aside for specially targeted economic activities to promote economic growth. Our government around the country is focused on growing the economy and creating jobs, and believes that the Maluti Apofong Special Economic Zone will go a long way in improving the provincial unemployment rate in the Free State. I thank you, House Chair.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The IFP.
Thank you, Chairperson. The failure of the Department of Rural Development and Land Reform with regards to its post-settlement programs, in particular the protected land under conservation, is a cause for concern for the IFP. Despite the despicable manner that was used by the Barrett government to evict rural communities from their forefathers' land, which costed them all their livelihood, these communities understood the importance of nature conservation, the value for biodiversity, and the obligation of the state to have at least 10% of its land put aside for conservation. These communities agreed to get their land back and to the fact that the land use was not going to change and that the management of the same land was going to be under the management authorities in terms of Section 42D. It is therefore very tormenting to know that some of these management authorities seem to undermine the settlement agreement and are deliberately failing to accept the fact that the land is owned by these rural communities. Landowners, which are the communities, instead of being treated as landowners and equal partners, these management authorities continue to treat them like junior partners, which is something that is undermining the co-management agreement. The management authorities continue to take decisions on their own without the consultation or involvement of landowners. We therefore urge the minister to intervene, because if this is not addressed, it will pose a threat not just to the relationship between these two parties, but a threat to the nature conservation itself. Thank you.
The NFP.
Thank you, House Chair. The NFP notes with great concern the continuous theft and hijacking of vehicles from Manguze area in Gwamhlabalingana and surroundings. These vehicles are stolen from innocent people by thieves who send them to Mozambique. It is worrying that although this crisis situation is well known to government, but not much is done to stop it. Former President Zuma went there twice. Former Police Minister Mbalula also went there twice. I don't want to mention MEC Kaunda at all because he's as good as doing nothing in his position. Their visit did not help the suffering community except to deliver useless speeches in trying to stop the community from blocking the border and closing Manguze, Mbazwane, and Skemelele towns. We therefore call new brooms President Ramaphosa and Minister Begicele to speedily sweep clean, because their predecessors failed the people of Umhlabalingana and the government as a whole, because once the state president intervenes as the commander-in-chief, it is expected that action be done without fail. So we hope Undosi will come with new ways of dealing with the matter before it gets out of hand. I thank you.
The ANC.
Thank you, Chair. The ANC always welcomes initiatives which improve the quality of schooling, particularly performance in mathematics, science, and technology, and therefore commends the signed agreement between ESCOM and TRACSA to extend the coverage of the ESCOM Science Enhancement Initiating Support Program from 5 schools to 30 schools. This initiative aims to assist with science, mathematics, and technology selected schools to grade 10 to 12 in the districts of Libode, Qumbu, Tsofimvaba, East London, and Uitenhage, in Eastern Cape schools. The program has shown remarkable results within the first year of inception. Over 2,000 learners and 30 educators from 30 schools have been benefited from the program and has assisted in improving the pass rate in maths and science, the province. The ANC believe that the impact of improving the pass rate in maths and science will be benefit the Eastern Cape and the country as the whole, and is confident that the extension of the program to the wider Eastern Cape province will open up doors for learners to pursue various careers, that instilling a sense of hope for a brighter future. I thank you.
Cope. COPE has taken note of the decision by ANC to withdraw its sponsored a debate in Parliament on the nationalization of the Reserve Bank. Nonetheless, COPE is concerned at the ANC stance on the Reserve Bank as adopted in their conference. The independence of the bank's operations and policy, particularly in relation to political interference, is of paramount importance, a cornerstone in our democratic order. Any insinuation that the bank's current private shareholders hold any sway over the bank's mandate is pure bunk, as the role, mandate, and independence of the Reserve Bank are clearly articulated and enshrined in our Constitution. What concerns COPE is the ANC's dogged determination to nationalize the bank and what informs this insistence. We raise this given the presidential hopeful and now Minister of, rather in the presidency, Honorable Zuma's comments that the Reserve Bank's policy could not be independent from the government, and that the bank should have a clear and deliberate task to implement developmental policies of the ANC rather than the entire
Honourable
country.
Member, your time has expired.
This is wrong.
The ANC.
Thank you.
Thank you, House Chair. The ANC places children at the center of our healthcare programs. We therefore welcome the opening of the pediatric and neonatal ICU unit in Nelson Mandela Children's Hospital on the 28th of February 2018. The unit consists of pediatric cardiology and pediatric nephrology units. The opening of the pediatric ICU will add an additional 48 beds to the system to accommodate children from South Africa and Southern African countries. The opening of this unit will also assist a great deal with reducing waiting times for MRI scans and CT scans. Charlotte Maxeke, Johannesburg Academic Hospital, Chris Hani Baragwanath Academic Hospital, Rahina Musa Mother and Child Hospital, and Steve Biko Academic Hospital will also be assisted in reducing the waiting list and waiting time significantly for children in dire need of these resources. The ANC believes the opening of the pediatric intensive care unit complex marks another milestone in the hospital's journey to fully operationalize.
Honourable Member, your time is now expired.
I thank you.
The DA.
Honourable Chair, City Press on Sunday carried a front-page story that included reference to SAA CEO as having approached National Treasury for authority to raise a further 13 billion rand in loans. SAA was bailed out by taxpayers at the expense of the poor and the 9.2 million unemployed South Africans to the tune of 10 billion rand in 2017. SAA is bankrupt, and it was always clear that the 10 billion rand bailout was not going to be enough to fund the losses. At the time of the November 2017 bailout, National Treasury informed Parliament that an additional bailout of 4.8 billion would be required in 2018-19. Now, only 3 months later, it seems that even the 4.8 billion will not be enough, and SAA are asking for more than double that at 13 billion. Honourable Chair, there are millions of children in South Africa who don't get enough to eat every day, who go to sleep hungry every night. Instead of feeding our children and equipping them to be productive members of society, we continue to waste money on trying to force a dead duck to fly when we all know that dead ducks cannot fly at all. SAA must be put under business rescue, stabilized and privatized.
The EFF.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. Open quotes. I am only 23 years old, supposedly a born-free, but in honest truth, I do not know what freedom is. To me and my fellow people from Anduli, Lower Tsolo, to us, democracy is a fairy tale. These are the words of a young university student from Anduli. In the community, there is no clean running water, no functioning clinic, and no proper roads and no electricity. It is the lack of electricity in Anduli which brings me before this house today. For years, the community has written to government at local, provincial, and national level, and even wrote a letter to the mayor, Dumani Zozo, personally, but they continue to be ignored. While there was once a budget for electricity provision in the area, it is mysteriously became insufficient aka corruption. The community has embarked on various peaceful protests, but to no avail. This government will continue to ignore the community until they become so disparate that they embark on violent protest. Why must it get to this point? We therefore call on the minister to ensure that people of Anduli are provided with the electricity with the agency required. Thank you.
The ANC.
Thank you, Chairperson. The African National Congress welcomes the launch of the national airline of the Democratic Republic of Congo, Congo Airways, flights between South Africa and Congo. The flights from Kinshasa and to Johannesburg will run 3 times a week on Wednesday, Saturday, and Sunday. The new DRC South Africa service represents Congo Airways' first scheduled flight to South Africa, affording an opportunity to further strengthen relationships, build new economic partnership, and enhance trade and tourism business between the two countries. The launch of Congo Airways DRC South Africa route follows the two countries' adherence to single African air transport market, which was launched last month on the margins of the African Union Summit in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. We believe that the South Africa industry players will work closely together with their Congolese partners to make the African Union Agenda 2063 a successful one regarding the movement of our African people and goods. I thank you.
The AIC.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson. We are very much concerned that this year the maize harvest is going to drop by 33% from 2017. This is due to low rainfall and decrease in planting maize. We understand well that maize is our staple food and is used for many purposes, e.g. human and animal product consumption and exportation to other countries. We are still to hear whether maize is also contaminated with this disease, listeriosis. The 2016-17 maize harvest of 16.8 billion tons was far above the harvest of 14.6 million tons of 1981, the largest figures that was seen before 2017. I wish that we come up with more plans so that we can harvest more maize for 2019, because this is the most we can export to other countries. With the land that the government has bought for the people, there should be more planting. They should be supported by the government. Yes, you are aware of the support given through CASP and others, but there should be more of this. Those that were running these farms before should be willing to impart skills to the new owners and hand over the equipment or mechanization. The dream of creating more jobs in agriculture and contribution to the growth of the country will then be realized. You are aware of the attempts that are made by the Department for Agriculture, Forest and Fisheries, but there should be more of this so that you can have more jobs. For
Honourable Member, your time is now expired. The ANC.
Chair. The ANC is committed in accelerating and expanding investment in public infrastructure. We therefore welcome the Gauteng Provincial Government investment of 440 million on a road construction project on the K54 in Mamelodi, Tshwane East. This project includes constructing a northbound dual carriageway, 2 bridges over the railway line, cycle and the pedestrian path, as well as the taxi bay. Furthermore, the project will also involve the resurfacing of the section leading to the N4 freeway, application of road markings, and the installation of traffic signal. Upon completion, the road will serve as a link between Mamelodi and N4 freeway and act as an alternate route to Moloto Road. It will also improve road safety in the township, as the Tsamaya Road is one of the busiest arterial roads in the township. The ANC believes that the main contractor will ensure that the small, medium, and micro-sized enterprises benefit from this project by creating job opportunities and skill transfer for women, youth, and people with disabilities, and alleviate poverty. And that counts.
The DA.
Thank you, Chairperson. The ANC is stealing 7 billion rand from poor children by raiding the basic education budget over the next 3 years. At the same time, government is providing billions of rands to the much older students to provide free higher education. In so doing, government is pitting young, helpless children against much older vocal students, and guess who won the fight? Why did the students win? Well, because they're better organized to burn down university libraries, to topple old statues, to burn police vehicles, to throw feces at the military, and to march through the streets smashing shop windows. But was this necessary? The DA has pointed out how government could save 112 billion rand through cost-saving measures which could have afforded subsidizing free or low-fee higher education for students without stealing money from our children's schooling like a robber in the night. As Maggie Thatcher once said, the trouble with socialists is that they always run out of other people's money. The trouble with the ANC is that they've already run out of other people's money. But this time, it's the children that will have to suffer, not the champagne-drinking, bloated cabinet.
The ANC.
Thank you, Chairperson. The African National Congress understands that entrepreneurship contributes to the success of South Africa's economy. We therefore welcome the announcement of an investment of 1.5 billion rands by the Small Business Development Ministry set to benefit the entrepreneurs. We understand that this is the outcome of a collaboration between the Department of Small Business Development, Small Enterprise Development Agency, Small Enterprise Finance Agency, and the Services SETA. The Entrepreneurship and Cooperatives Development Institute, in which the 3-year 1.5 billion rand funds will be invested, was launched in Johannesburg recently. This partnership, Honorable Chair, is the culmination of a long process of efforts from various stakeholders in both private and public sector organizations for the past 12 months in an effort to build entrepreneurship and an enterprising nation. We believe that there is a program of action NEPT which comprises of business, monitoring and evaluation, entrepreneurship societies, micro entrepreneurship program, business growth program, startup enterprise villages, and skills development. The ANC government believes in partnership, in partnering with small business in order to create a framework that will ensure that
Honourable Member,
entrepreneurs
your time has
succeed in their
expired.
endeavors. Thank you.
Thank you. Honourable members, that concludes member statements. Are there any ministerial responses? The Honourable Minister of Trade and Industry, the Honourable Minister of Economic Development, the Honourable Minister of Science and Technology. Let's start in that order.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Chairperson, I want to thank the Honourable Kapa for the information that he
Order,
provided.
honourable members.
The information that he provided to the House about the rollout of the top structure program for the Maluti Apafong Special Economic Zone. I should say that the top structure means the actual factories and the productive activities that are going on in those factories. The bulk infrastructure, much of it has already been rolled out. That top infrastructure is only rolled out as we start to see investments coming in. And I could say that that infrastructure is against committed and investments and applications of a total of nearly 2 billion rand. So investments of around 2 billion rand are being rolled out in the Maluti Apafong Special Economic Zone in projects agro-processing, chemicals, renewable energy, clothing, textiles, and other manufacturing. As far as the listeriosis is concerned, I wanted to just say that we have been working with the Department of Health as well as our colleagues in the Department of Agriculture, Forestry and Fisheries. As soon as we became aware of the risk of this listeriosis outbreak, when the report from the National Institute of Communicable Diseases was released by the Minister of Health on Sunday, when that report became available, an hour thereafter the National Consumer Commission issued its recall notices. The Honourable Member is correct that we need to continue to communicate with our people about the issues associated therewith, including the question of the return of the products and also the disposal. That is being discussed right now this afternoon between the National Consumer Commission and the companies concerned. We will continue to monitor this, and wherever there are instances of harmful products being supplied on our markets, wherever they come from, we will not hesitate to act through the NCC. Finally, I'd just like to add my voice to that of the Honourable Fubs and congratulate him, Mr. Mshibi, for his well-deserved award at the Furniture Exhibition. Thank you very much.
The Honourable Minister of Economic Development.
Thank you, Honourable House Chair. To appreciate the statements of Honourable Mashlangu and Kapa, and honourable members may be interested to know that Stats SA this morning released the country's latest GDP figures. 6 takeouts for honourable members. The first is that the economy is now valued at 4.7 trillion rand. The second one is Stats SA indicated that the quarterly results for the last quarter of last year showed that the economy grew by 3.1% for the quarter. And agriculture, particularly maize production, drove that growth. The third one is, it was also the annual GDP results. And it showed that the GDP growth in reality exceeded the estimates that we had at the time of the budget. The GDP grew by 1.3% against a growth the previous year of 0.6%. Interestingly also is that the provincial growth results came out for 2016, so it's a year earlier, and the province with the strongest growth was Gauteng province with 1.4% growth, followed by the Western Cape with 1.1%, and then the Eastern Cape 0.8%, and KZN 0.7%. I should also indicate, perhaps worrying for us, that in the latest results, imports are growing faster than exports. And finally, Honourable House Chair, Statistics South Africa provided information going back in which they restated some of the figures Based on that restatement, Stats SA says that the recession that was announced last year did in fact not happen because we didn't have 2 quarters of consecutive decline. I'm sure that all of these things would be of interest to honourable members and will be discussed and debated more widely in the next few weeks. Thank you very much.
The Honourable Minister of Science and Technology.
Thank you very much, House Chair. Just to speak to the statement made by Honourable Ndongeni around the implementation of the work that has been done by the department. I think it's the Department of Basic Education, but more around improvement of maths and science in high schools in order to contribute towards a better community, especially for our children. And definitely agree that government, the South African government, especially the ANC government, has done a lot of work in really investing in the future of the children of South Africa by putting more emphasis of the work around science and technology, because we understand that with the new industrial revolution, more works are going to come from that sector. If you look at as well, Chair, hence we're saying, when you look at the World Economic Forum report, that estimates that almost around 2050, more than half of the jobs we have today will not exist. Therefore, it's important for this government and for the country and all of us to partner and work towards ensuring that the youth of this country are equipped in such a manner that they can respond to the technology, but also to respond to the future challenges that are going to be there. So I really want to stand and say we need to emphasize the work that needs to be done in that area, but more encourage all of us to partner and ensure that our children are ready for the future. Thank you very much.
The Honourable Minister of Higher Education.
Thank you very much, Honourable Chairperson. I wish to begin by informing the Honourable Ollis that I do not drink champagne, which he probably does. But secondly, I hope that before he tabled the statement here, that he had consulted his colleagues, the Honourable Kasim and the Honourable Bozoli, who work in the education sector and understand the interests and needs of young people, and therefore that they would fundamentally disagree with the statement he made. We are pleased as the African National Congress that fee-free higher education will be introduced through the allocation of an initial 12.4 billion rand in the new financial year, providing support to over 340,000 university students and over 420,000 TVET full-time equivalent students. We believe this is an appropriate policy step to have taken, and it is about time that the doors of education and learning were opened to all children in our society, whatever their circumstance. Thank you very much.
The Honourable Minister of Police.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Indeed, it is true that...
Order, honourable members.
It is true that there is a problem at the border of Lingana and Mozambique of the 4x4s and SUVs that have been stolen. But it is not very true that nothing has been done. And the figures are beginning to show that something has been done under the leadership of the former president and the former minister. More so, there were steps taken and left in the making by the minister, a former minister of police, that will be taken forward, like involving the government of Mozambique, because without their cooperation, no achievements will be reached. So we are working towards that. Yes, there is a decline. It is low, but very soon things will be fine and be stable. Thanks.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. There's one more opportunity for a ministerial response. The Honourable Minister of Small Business Development.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. I wish to thank Honourable Mahlangu for the comments that she has made in relation to the fund. From the department's point of view, we would like to say, Chairperson, that we all should try, by all means, to speak and support small and medium enterprises, because clearly the future, in as far as economic development, empowerment, and addressing issues of poverty, unemployment, and inequality, truly rests on supporting small and medium enterprises. What I would like to say, Chairperson, is that we call on big business, because the member was speaking about a fund that is being put together by government. We will call on big business to also implement the fund that they announced 2 years ago, which is 1.5 billion. But at the same time, Chairperson, we would like to say government can do everything it can to have the funds to train people. But if small and medium enterprises do not get the access to the market, and big business is the one that's really not opening up the access to market, particularly to youth-owned businesses, women-owned businesses, and black business in general. Finally, I want to say, when I started here, Chairperson, there's a party called the Democratic, what are they called? Democratic Party, DA, ne? They said there is a trust deficit between government and big business. I want to tell them today that that trust deficit that they think exists will only exist if big business does not give the opportunity to small and medium enterprises, and in particular, black-owned businesses. We're not apologetic for opening up the opportunity and giving small and medium enterprises that are black-owned the opportunity. We're saying that DA must also stand up and tell the big business, which in the majority is white, to open up the opportunity for black business.
Thank you. Honourable members, that concludes ministerial responses. The last item on the order paper is notices of motion. Does any member of the ANC wish to give a notice of motion?
Yes. Honourable House Chair, I move on behalf of the African National Congress that at its next sitting, this House debates celebrating the 100th anniversary of the birth of one of the greatest leaders of this country, the continent and the world, Iswitwilandwe uNelson Ralihlahla Mandela. I thank you.
The DA.
I hereby move on behalf of the Democratic Alliance that in light of the recently announced that VAT will be increased from 14 to 15%, despite the fact that this increase is not necessary, considering that expenditure can be reduced to avoid the VAT increase for this year, and further given the fact that this increase will hurt the people of South Africa, especially the poor, it is of utmost importance that this House debates the desirability of a VAT increase as opposed to expenditure cuts.
The EFF.
Thank you, House Chair. I hereby move on behalf of the Economic Freedom Fighters that in its next sitting, the House debates the establishment of a state-owned bank to drive the transformation of the country's economy.
The ANC.
I move on behalf of the ANC that at its next sitting, the House debates, working with the farming communities to accelerate the improvement of the living conditions of farm dwellers, including the provision of subsidized houses and other basic services. I so move, House Chair.
The IFP.
Thank you, House Chair. On behalf of the Inkatha Freedom Party, I shall move at the next sitting that this House debates the failure of the Department of Rural Development and Land Reform to assist rural communities whose land is under nature conservation. Thank you.
The NFP.
Thank you, Honourable Chair. In the next sitting of this House, I shall move on behalf of the NFP that this House debates the outbreak of listeriosis disease in Limpopo province and the ways to prevent it from spreading all over the country. I so move. The
ANC.
Thank you, Chair. I move on behalf of the ANC that in its next sitting, the House debates the acceleration of the provision of proper sanitation system in the rural areas. Thank you.
The UDM.
I hereby move on behalf of the United Democratic Movement that the House at its next sitting debates the effects of unregulated houses or rooms letting such as Airbnb on other registered accommodation facilities in residential areas, as well as the risks that ordinary residents are exposed to. I so move.
The Freedom Front Plus. The DA. The DA.
Thank you, House Chair. I hereby move on behalf of the Democratic Alliance that this House at its next sitting debates the continued and current shambolic state of the Passenger Rail Agency of South Africa, the attempt by the previous minister and the interim board to stop the investigation into corruption into PRASA, and what needs to be done to get PRASA back on track. Thank you.
The EFF.
Thank you, House Chair. I hereby move on behalf of the Economic Freedom Fighters that in its next sitting, the House debates addressing the nutritional insecurity which has a dire impact on especially poorer communities. I so move.
The ANC.
Thank you, House Chair. I move on behalf of the ANC that in its next sitting, the House debates the prioritizing and acceleration of the development of sport facilities in black townships and rural communities. I so move.
COPE. ACDP. The ANC.
I move on behalf of the African National Congress that in its next sitting, the House debates strengthening the instrument of representative and participatory democracy. I so move.
The AIC.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair. I hereby move on behalf of AIC that this House in its next sitting debates the feasibility of changing the current electoral system so as to improve representative democracy, including public representation in government decision-making processes. I so move. Thank you.
Agang. The ANC.
Chair, I move on behalf of the ANC that in its next sitting, the House debates implementing the widening of the allocation of the state's legal work for broader participation by black people in general and women in particular. Thank you.
The APC. The PAC. The DA.
Thank you, Honorable House Chair. I hereby move on behalf of the Democratic Alliance that in light of the fact that the majority of scholar transport deaths since 2013 happened in the last 11 months, despite the DAs consistently raising the issue of scholar transport over many years. We therefore propose that this House debates the safety of scholar transport as a matter of urgency. Thank you.
The ANC.
Thank you, House Chair. I move on behalf of the ANC that in its next sitting, the House debate investing in the indigenous research and innovation capacities as long-term sustainable development. Thank you.
Honourable members, that concludes notices of motion and the business for the day. The House is adjourned.